Remember my friend Kathy from the last video? Well, I got to explaining something to her and she realized something really bright. A huge light bulb. It's all about sugar. Why could this be so bad for your weight loss? Well, the problem with the whole blood sugar insulin type roller coaster is that insulin is a fat storing hormone. So whenever it's released, your body's actually going to begin to store fat if you consume too much carbs at one time. Hey, I'm going to explain to you what exactly took place in my client Kathy, and kind of maybe you can apply this to the food patterns that you've been eating and continue eating after you have completed this nutrition challenge that we've been on. First of all, I know that it looks like a lot of writing here, but the line across here, down here below, is the hour. So this is 2 hours after you eat, 6 to 8 hours after you eat, and 12 hours after you eat. As this rises up here, you're actually going to have an insulin rise due to the amount of carbohydrates you consume. So the higher the carbohydrates, or the more you consume at each meal, the higher this is going to go. Now, we're going to call some of these the zones. Down here is the danger zone, where your blood sugar tends to drop a little too low. And right here in the yellow is the fat burning zone, which I'm sure you all want to stay at in order to continue doing what you're doing. The one right up above that is the weight gain zone, and that happens when you consume way too much at one time. So I'm going to kind of break it down for you. Remember, our three macronutrient families are carbs, proteins, and fat. So I'm going to talk about each one of those and what takes place. I'm also going to talk about your pancreas. Your pancreas sits right below the lower part of your rib cage, and it secretes a natural hormone. Actually, it's one of the hormones that you can control in your body, and can directly control it by the amount of food and the type of food that you consume in one meal setting. So let's just say we're going to consume a carbohydrate. Now remember, there are two types of carbohydrates. There's a simple carbohydrate and a complex carbohydrate. Simple meaning liquid sugar, apple juice. I'm going to pick on apple juice. Complex meaning more complex to break down, loaded in fiber, difficult for the body. It's just complex to break down. So I'm going to pick on an apple. All right, 4 ounces of apple juice versus a small baseball-sized apple. They both have the exact same amount of carbohydrates in it, but they're going to digest very differently within the body. One does not have to be broke down, so it simply hits the bloodstream, simply spikes it up, therefore it's called the simple carb, and simply comes down very quickly. The other one, the apple, loaded in fiber, very complex to break down. So it's very complex, so it's not going to rise it, make it spike up as high as the simple carbs, and it's going to come back down a little more slowly, about 2 to 2.5 hours of digestion, versus the apple juice is going to digest in about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Now, knowing that is huge, because right after a workout, you want something that will simply hit that bloodstream, simply go in, and nothing that's very complex to break it down, because your muscles hopefully are depleted of all of the stored sugars that were in there from the previous workout, pre and post workout, or the previous meal. Insulin actually is not a bad guy. The thing of it with insulin, it's actually supposed to help transport your carbohydrates into those muscle cells. That's the purpose of insulin. It helps to shove it on in. It's like a transport system. When you eat carbohydrates, it picks it up out of the bloodstream, hauls it on over to your muscle cells, tissues, and organs that needs it for that instant energy for your next workout. But here's the problem. When we eat too many carbohydrates at one meal setting, and I'm emphasizing setting instead of for the whole day, because our body doesn't look at carbohydrates like a bank account where you can save it all up and consume it at one meal. It is per meal setting. When you consume too much at one time, it's going to go up above the fat burning zone and come up into the weight gain zone. Therefore, the pancreases are working overtime, which means you're going to tend to wear it out a lot quicker in life, which means insulin production isn't going to take place, which brings on diabetes. So you definitely don't want to wear the pancreas out. Plus, when you overwork it, overproduce your insulin, you're actually going into the weight gaining zone. Not exactly what you want to hear, especially if you're eating healthy foods. Still, eating healthy foods If you overconsume them at 1 meal setting, you will store and go into weight gain, because the insulin carries all of the blood sugars over from the food you just consumed, the carbohydrates you just consumed, shoves it into those muscles, and once those muscles are refilled, it'll immediately go into a storage unit, which is known as fat. It's our fat storage unit. That's why insulin gets its name as the fat storing hormone. If you don't consume it at the right time and the right amounts of carbohydrates, it's going to end up storing it all as fat, even if it's healthy foods. So let's break it down. That was your carbs. Now let's look at your proteins. Protein takes a long time to digest, takes about 45 minutes before it digests, and it slowly breaks down, and it's going to break down in about 6 to 8 hours, usually right at 8. It takes a while. Now, protein doesn't break down immediately because it's very difficult for your body to break down protein. It's a lot like that apple. It's very complex to break down. Our body's first source of energy does not come from protein, nor does it come from fat. It actually comes directly from our carbohydrates if we have carbohydrates in our body. So it's going to take the carbohydrate for that instant energy to break down protein, which is crucial. Keep that in mind, because that's going to be a key ingredient in just a moment when I explain combinations. Protein needs the first source of energy to break it down, which means it's going to pull from carbohydrates. All right, our third macronutrient family, fats. Takes a long time to digest, stretches way on out for a good 12 to 15 hours. It delays everything. So if you eat a high-fatty meal, catfish, hush puppies, french fries, you're going to feel bloated and icky for a while. It's the fat that delays digestion. It's like putting it all in slow motion in your body. Fat is good for you, don't get me wrong, but too much of a good thing can end up being a bad thing. So you want to limit how much fat you do have at 1 meal setting. You've got to have fats. I have a lot of clients that want to avoid fats altogether. You have to have fat to lose fat. Sounds crazy, but you have to have fat to lose fat. It's part of the metabolic cycle. You've got to have it. Okay, now let's move into combinations. What is the importance of combinations here? Well, I've already told you protein is very difficult to break down. It has to pull from the first source of energy that your body can utilize for energy, which is carbohydrates. So if you combined a protein with a carbohydrate, preferably complex, because we know that's going to delay digestion and has a less rise of your insulin, okay, unless it's right after a workout. And then it's okay to have that simple carb. But let's just say it's not after a workout. We're going to combine that complex carb with that protein. That protein is difficult to break down, and so is a complex carb. But when you put them together, they act like a tug of war. They pull together and meet right in the middle in that fat-burning zone, and it keeps you there in that fat-burning zone. So that right there is crucial. That is key, not only for blood sugar control for diabetes, but blood sugar control for weight gain, weight loss, all of that. It's crucial that you want to keep it in the fat-burning zone by doing the right combinations. When you combine a protein with that complex carbohydrate, you're going to keep it in the fat-burning zone. And that will actually enable you to eat about every 4 to 6 hours. Very important. Now let's just say you're going to have a small snack. Small snack would be maybe a 15 grams worth of a very small, I'm going to pick on an apple again. Well, just that for a snack. You can have a protein along with that. You could also have a fat along with that, such as, let's just say, peanut butter and an apple. You're going to use the peanut butter or almond butter as a dip. That would be a perfect little snack, a great combination. However, if you consume that apple all by itself, kind of puts it into a different category. So you definitely want to have the right combinations if you're shooting for proper blood sugar control, for diabetes, hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia, weight loss. If you want to avoid weight gain, that type of combination is the key for it all. Again, I just want to emphasize it is important that you do the right combinations, never overconsume the carbohydrates if you want to stay in the fat burning zone. That is one thing that you do have control over. The only hormone you have control over, direct control over. So eating too many carbs at 1 meal setting is definitely going to put you in the weight gain zone. So when your blood sugar releases too much insulin, it not only makes you fatter, causes the blood sugar to drop, which makes you hungry, you're going to be more miserable, you're actually going to also eat more sugar and processed foods. It's much like a roller coaster that it just seems like you can't get off at all. I just want you to see that you can have the same results or even better than Kathy saw just by eating the right foods in the right combinations. So where's Kathy today? Well, she went from being a size 14, 16 down to a size 2. Yep, you got it. Lost 60 pounds. She was consistent with every single meal, tried to keep those blood sugars in the right range. Okay, I just want to kind of show you a little bit of what's going on in your body. In the mornings, your metabolism hopefully has been reset through the night. A lot of repairing, rebooting, everything takes place through the night while you sleep if you get at least 7 or more hours of uninterrupted sleep. So when you wake up in the morning, your metabolism is actually at its best. When you go on throughout the day, it actually starts to drop. Now, when do Americans eat their largest meals? You got it, at dinner, when our metabolism tends to be at its worst. You're tired or fatigued. If you're not eating well, then obviously you're not drinking enough water as well either. So that slows the metabolism down even more. When you exercise, it actually reboots that metabolism and it brings it up higher than the average American who's not exercising. So let's just say we're going to exercise in the morning. It's going to reboot. It's going to come up. So you're actually burning way more calories throughout the day compared to somebody who's not exercising at all. Now, let's just say we're going to do it in the afternoon. So we're going to do it in the afternoon. It's best to eat after your workout, hint, hint. And then it's rebooted, and as you go to sleep at night, it's a little bit higher than the average person. It's going to reboot there. So your metabolism is going to raise up when you are exercising. There's something called a growth hormone, especially when you're doing any type of weights. Women tend to have a higher rate of growth hormone production when you're doing things with legs. That tends to be our largest muscle, and men tends to be the upper body is our largest muscle. So growth hormone tends to be produced a little bit more. That right there helps to stimulate the metabolism. So don't be afraid to push the weights just a little bit in that area if you want that growth hormone boost. Another way that it produces is in the middle of the night in our sleep. So it's very important you get your sleep, 7 or more hours of sleep, uninterrupted preferably. And you'll beat that average American that's sitting on the couch.